Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. We are super excited to have some great guests who are going to be talking about AI-driven DevOps, how they're using Copado AI in their day-to-day lives. I think it's going to be very informative, and then you're also going to get a sneak peek of some very exciting updates coming from Copado AI from David Venegas as we end the call today. This call is being recorded, so we'll have it available on our Copado YouTube channel and within the Copado community if you aren't able to stay for the whole time today. So I do want to go ahead and give you a highlight of what's on the agenda. We are going to start with a panel focused on AI-driven DevOps. Then we're going to hear these use cases from Joe and Natasha, two of our Copado community members and also Copado champions. And then, like I said, we're going to wrap up. You're going to see some exciting future insights. And hopefully, if we have time at the end, we'll open it up for Q&A as well. So I think the first thing we'll do is let our wonderful guests introduce themselves. We have three people joining us today. We have David Venegas from Copado, Natasha Bowman from Booz Allen Hamilton, and Joe Thrasher from Arkansas Blue Cross Blue Shield. Natasha and Joe are both Copado champions. Joe is a new Copado champion, so this is one of his first events. So welcome, Joe. Why don't you kick us off with a quick introduction of who you are, and then we'll pass it over to Natasha and David.
Okay. My name is Joe Thrasher, and I work at Arkansas Blue Cross and Blue Shield and have done so for over 20 years. I've been in IT development for most of my career. I started back in the early 90s, in the late 1900s, in PC construction, then into network construction and development, and now more into release management over the past couple of years since we've had a big influx of Salesforce development in our enterprise. So we need to have someone who can effectively move those changes into production without a lot of drama or problems. And that's me and the rest of my team members.
Great. What about you, Natasha? Can you share a little bit about yourself and what your role looks like?
Absolutely. My name is Natasha Bowman. I work at Booz Allen Hamilton. I'm a developer, so my day starts with a stand-up, and then usually I'm looking at dev tickets or staring at VS Code or Stack Overflow for the rest of the day. Sometimes I get pulled into some meetings, but...
Understandable. And David, could you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your role here at Copado?
Definitely. And first of all, thanks everybody for joining today. This is very exciting. My name is David Venegas, and I've been 7 years at Copado working on the product teams. And so I've been involved in the data deploy, product launch, in the source format pipelines, and now with the AI platform. So just mentioning some capabilities out there in case some of you use that as part of your work. And also, I was new to the Salesforce ecosystem when I joined Copado. And my whole first month, I did like 50 trailheads. And it was just amazing. I felt it was like the Matrix. I was just absorbing all the information. So I'm really excited to be with you all today.
Yeah, that's great. There's definitely lots to learn out there. Wow, we have a lot to talk about. So let's dive in straight into the topic that we're all here for today, AI. I think it would be really interesting to hear what all of your first experiences with AI were like. So the very first time you interacted with AI, whenever that was. And when you had that experience, what were your expectations at the time? And then how did the actual experience with AI measure up? Natasha, would you like to kick us off there?
Sure. I think my first real encounter was actually at Dreamforce last year, just with some of the demos and presentations. I was pretty, I guess, late to the AI trend. I didn't really jump on board anything and seek it out myself. So then my first initial encounter specifically with an LLM was actually Copado GPT. So the first question I put in was how to delete a merge conflict resolution, because that's kind of an unexpected answer. You have to navigate to the classic page, and that always throws people off on my teams. So I had low expectations, and it gave me the exact route to get there, and I was super impressed.
Yeah, I can understand kind of having a low expectations, the first experience you have, and then pretty much being blown away by how quickly this was able to get you that answer.
Right, quickly and accurately.
Accurately, for sure. What about you, Joe? What's your experience, like your first interactions with AI looked like?
I think it was probably last year, maybe the year before. We got a hold of a copy of, well, the Copado or the Chat GPT application and subscribed to it so that we could use it more, because I would ask many questions and would eventually run out of time because they only give you so many responses. And my expectation was it was probably going to be more of a campy thing, not necessarily something that was going to be able to be helpful, because you wouldn't necessarily be able to give it as much information as it needed to be able to make an informed decision, or the answers that it would give you would just be completely wrong. But I have been well and truly surprised with the GPT models, Chat GPT and Copado GPT. I find that the more information you give it, the more correct it is. I use it every single day. I've used it multiple times today, even. And I really don't think that I could be as effective in my current position without it as I am with it.
Yeah, it's pretty wild to think. Both of you said your first experience was last year, and obviously so much has happened with AI over the last year. So we'll dive into more about how you're using it today. But first, David, I do want to go back to you and hear what your thoughts were when you first got your hands on AI and how that helped you shape where we're at now with Copado.
Definitely. And if we think about the initial versions of AI, more the machine learning, I remember on Facebook when it started detecting faces of friends and family, I was like, wow, this is exciting, a little bit scary as well. But I thought, like, what's going on behind the scenes? And I read it was these machine learning models. But then fast forward to December 2 years ago, I was reading the news. I was already in the Christmas holidays, and people were talking about this, Chat GPT and this Gen AI, and it had just come out a few weeks before. And so I was so intrigued, and they were also talking about DALL-E to generate images. So I signed up, and then I saw some examples how they were doing these images with Picasso style paintings. And so I'm like, well, Picasso only painted usually like Mediterranean style subjects. So I started playing around, and I'm like, what if Picasso painted in Mexico? What would that look like? And so it was super colorful with a lot of flowers. And then I asked, what if Picasso painted, French people? And so you would see people with their baguettes and with their striped T-shirts. So it was just amazing to see the creativity that this could spark. And at this point, I didn't even think about work. I was just playing around with it. But then 1 month later, when I was back at work, I'm like, hey, I could actually, try this out with emails, try this out with documents. So that's when really I started using it for work. And like Joe mentioned and Natasha, I've been using it very regularly.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It is. It's a good point. There's so much beyond just what we're talking about today, too, that I'm sure everyone was surprised by when you first kind of got your hands on it. So now it sounds like all of you have said you're using AI a lot more today. It's kind of part of your daily routine. So if you'd be willing to share, like, what does that look like for you? How are you using tools like Copado AI and fitting it into your daily responsibilities and your decision-making processes? What does that look like today? Natasha, would you like to share what that looks like for you?
Absolutely. So Booz Allen is public sector, which means our use of AI is pretty limited when it comes to project work. But using Copado GPT has helped our onboarding and solutioning process immensely. We used it to create documentation that was previously not maintained well and wasn't being used too often. And now we have a couple of documents pinned in our Slack onboarding channel, and it's been really helpful.
What about you, Joe? It sounded like you said you've already used it multiple times today. So it seems like it's a pretty big piece of your daily activity.
Yes, it is. So having the availability of Copado GPT here in my office is like having a Copado / Salesforce / GitHub expert on call. I can ask it any question. Generally, the questions that I ask it are more technical in nature, like how do I do this, or where do I go to find this setting, or something of that nature. The thing that shows the value here is if anybody here in the chat has had a problem in Salesforce that is maybe not necessarily so common, or even worse, an error that is super common, then when you go to Google and you search it, you get either millions of hits and you couldn't possibly look at them all, or you get questions and answers, or just questions that were 2 or 3 years ago that nobody answered, and it really becomes a needle in a haystack kind of search to get information out of Google, especially as time goes on and Google caches more and more results. And you can filter some of those out, but still the problem remains. The benefit to having Copado GPT is I'm not asking it a question. We're having a conversation about a problem that I'm having. So whenever it answers me, I can refine my question based upon the results I've gotten, and get really down to the heart of the matter of what the issue is, or the process that I'm trying to do, what sort of details I have to do. If there's part of its answer that I don't understand, then I can say, I don't understand what you mean here, expand, or give it to me step by step, or explain it to me like I'm 5, or whatever sort of prompt you want to use, so that you can get useful information and it stays on task, it stays in context, so that everything that you're asking it knows what you're talking about. I guess the one line there is you're having a conversation about your problem instead of just searching Google, which saves me hours.
Absolutely. It saves so much time, and it is pretty awesome to be able to refine those questions and really get down to exactly what you're looking for. So I'm glad you've been able to get into a good process to save you time throughout the day. What about you, David? How have you increased your use of AI? Obviously, you've been working to develop a lot of AI stuff within Copado too. So I guess, what does it look like for you today? How are you using AI?
Absolutely. And, you know, we use, as we're building Copado GPT, we also use Copado GPT at the same time. And there's a lot of meetings and design sessions that go on the product side of things. And for those of you on the call, I'm sure there's some business analysts or product owners. I'm sure you experience some of this as well. So just with the amount of meetings, it's always hard to go back to your desk and for me to process everything that we discuss and put it down into user stories or into requirements. So that takes a lot of time. And so now what we started doing is that we now transcribe every call that we have internally, so that I can just upload that transcript into Copado GPT or AI, and then I can quickly break it down into user stories or translate it into a requirement document. And I basically just need to do some edits here and there, but it saves me so much time, but also just brain training. I don't know how to, one thing is time, but the other one is the energy that you have for the rest of the day. And I feel like I have so much energy to do so much more and continue to be creative and thinking outside of the box, because the AI is taking care of more of a lot of the processing that I used to do before. So On that side, the translating in meetings into requirements and also brainstorming. Many times we forget things. So for example, I don't have a security background, for example. And so when I'm doing a requirement, I always go through, what kind of security considerations should I make sure to go in here, for example. And so now the requirements have higher quality simply because of this knowledge that I didn't have based on my background, but I can do that back and forth with AI as well to improve it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Not only the time, but the mental energy to do so much other things throughout the day. Well, now that you're using it a lot, it sounds like you all have your ways that you found it to be beneficial, but are there any unexpected ways that you've utilized Copado AI in your workflows? So maybe a way that you hadn't initially planned to use it, and how did you discover that use case? And Joe, why don't you start us off there?
Okay, yeah, I've got a good one. So we're currently attempting to connect Copado robotics testing to our ADO instance, and we're having some trouble getting that connection to work. We're talking to technical support, and they're helping us out with that. But initially, we were doing some testing, and one of the things that Copado GPT suggested to me was that I use Postman to verify that my API calls were correct. The only issue that I had with that was I don't know how to use Postman. So that's what my response was, is I don't know how to use Postman. Tell me how to do it. And so it did. It taught me how to use Postman, and it showed me how to create the API calls, and it showed me how to execute those API calls. And I found out that the API calls weren't the problem, but I would have liked it if they were the problem, because then I could have fixed them. But unfortunately, they were not. But that's one of the ways that I didn't expect Copado GPT to be so helpful, was by being able to tell me what to do, or give me step-by-step instructions on how to do something that I haven't done before. That takes a load off. Whenever you're in a meeting and someone says, well, we need you to do this, or we need this to happen, can you do that? You don't have to think, do I say yes because I don't really know how to do that? You can just say yes, because you can learn how. Copado will teach you how. That's so much easier.
Yeah, that's a really good example. What about you, David?
So something unexpected was having data for demos, because many times in product we do a lot of demos, or even when building Salesforce apps, we have to present and train other people. And so I was surprised that we've used AI already to help us build this application or this feature, but now to actually demo it to an audience, it's like, okay, can you give me some, what prompts can I do to showcase everybody about the value of this product? So it was a fun and experience to discover that use case.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point. It is fun to find these new ways you can use the tool that maybe you didn't initially think of. Well, with that, let's look into the future of AI for DevOps. I'd love to hear what you all think are going to be the next trends here in AI for DevOps, and how these developments might shape the future of the industry. So David, why don't you go ahead and share your thoughts there?
Totally. So what we're seeing is two fronts that are expanding. One is knowledge, and how AI is able to tap into not only public knowledge out there, like documentation and just how some public platforms work, but also our own knowledge. So if we use OneDrive or Google Drive, or if we use CRMs like Salesforce or ServiceNow, how does AI tap into that knowledge to help us with better insights, better guidance? And so that's an area that we're going to see a lot of growth already. And you can see with Einstein features, for example, Salesforce advertises, to help sales and marketing people, you can tap into all the data that's already on Salesforce, all the opportunities. And so you just like we can see that on Salesforce, we're seeing that across the board. And then the other front is the automation front. And there is a lot of potential for AI to make decisions for us in an automated way. And so with that comes responsibility. And so what these new systems are doing is trying to detect, is this decision a low risk? As an AI, can I actually make this decision? Or if this decision does a potential risk, I should better consult, one of the members of the team. And so there's this whole path in the future around automation and how AI can take action and not only be on the backside helping us, but actually being able to do some work as well. So those are the two fronts that we're seeing.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be very interesting to see how those evolve over the next few years, the next few months. I feel like it'll go pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Natasha, what about you? Is there anything that you feel that is coming from trends for AI and DevOps?
I haven't seen specific examples, but I think security is a big one for AI. Like I said, Booz Allen is public sector, so we don't trust new technology enough yet, usually, to use it when it comes to government work. So I think securing AI, at least I would like that to be a trend or a focus. But I think in general, people are a little bit hesitant to use AI if they don't understand it. So I think focus on securing it, or at least explaining why it's not threatening, is a good future path.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really good call out that most people can relate to. And Joe, is there anything that you would add, either trends that you think are coming, or like Natasha said, things that you would hope to see?
Yes. Okay. So currently, Copado GPT, ChatGPT, all of the GPTs and those models, those are large language models. You can talk to them. They can be multimodal, so you can give them information, but they can't really do anything. In order for it to be able to do something, you have to create a large action model. And I think that what we're going to see more as time goes on is you have large language models that interface with people. And inside of this AI architecture, you'll have large language models that are purpose-built for talking to people or talking to other models, and large action models, which will be the models that do things. And they'll become more like a mixture of experts, or a panel of experts, where you talk to the large language model and you give it your input, the prompt, the thing you want it to do. And then it confers with all of the other models and makes a plan of action, and then has those models report back to it, and then refines it back and forth between the models until finally it presents back to you the thing that it's going to do, and you say, yes, that's what I meant. That's something that's going to happen. We're going to have a lot more specialized, smaller agent models that do specific tasks, do specific things, and those agents will be able to connect to each other, and we'll become more custodians of the models themselves. And prompt engineers, it'll be very important to be able to type in exactly what you mean and give a good description so that the model can understand what you mean. Wow, that was a lot.
That was a lot, but I think you're spot on. And I think you're going to see what Copado is kind of thinking in that same realm when David shares the insights of what Copado AI is hoping to achieve very soon. So I think you're spot on there, Joe. And I do want to end with kind of a fun question for all of you. Hopefully fun, maybe also scary to think about. I want you to think about a favorite sci-fi or AI-related movie, and if there's any elements of those films that you see in today's AI technology, or again, that you wish to see in today's world. And so, Natasha, I'll let you answer that first.
I'm not a huge sci-fi person, but Black Mirror has some really crazy AI episodes, and I always like watching those. I'm not sure that I would hope for any of that technology to make its way, but it's creeping in for sure.
Yeah, I feel like watching it now, you can kind of start to understand how that could happen, and that is where it starts to get
100%.
a little, interesting.
Hopefully it's like preventative.
For sure. What about you, David?
Yeah, well, I haven't watched the Black Mirror episodes, but I've heard they're fun to watch. On my side, I really like Wall-E. And when I saw that movie, it was really interesting how I connected with the character. And because in the beginning, the character had specific tasks, but after several hundreds of years, the character started actually having empathy and like connecting with the things that he was doing. So something I would like to see in AI in the future is kind of how there could be some characters and how they could have some type of personality as opposed to just be like super generic, but just something that, you know, as you're working during the day and then you're interacting with AI, it even sparks more creativity for you. And I feel like in Wall-E, they did that really great.
Yeah, that's a really good example. I also feel like we're slowly already starting to see that sometimes. I feel like I'll ask something to ChatGPT and the way they'll respond, I'm like, that sounded like a person. So it will be interesting to see how that character comes through more over the years. And Joe, let's wrap up with you. Is there any movie elements that you see in today's technology?
Okay, so unlike Natasha, I am the biggest, nerdiest nerd that ever nerded. I am a computer nerd from way, way back before computers were cool. And the first movie I can remember that now, when I look back on it, say, oh my God, that's exactly what we have today, was a little known and kind of campy romantic comedy from around 1983, 1984 called Electric Dreams. I'll give you a real quick plot here. What happened was there was an architect. He wanted to make an earthquake-proof brick. He lived in San Francisco. So he got himself a home computer. And at that time, in the early 80s, home computers were this unknown mystery. Oh, what can it do? It can do anything. And he connected it to his business's mainframe, which, again, with Hollywood magic, the mainframe of the computer talked, and the computer caught on fire, and he put it out. But then whenever all the ashes were cleared and the smoke settled, the computer now had an intelligence of its own, and he could talk to it. So along with all the other romantic comedy hijinks that happened, he talked to this computer and used a light pen to describe what he needed, and the computer made him an earthquake-proof brick, and it worked. So that is pretty much exactly what a large language model is these days, a multimodal large language model. And I highly recommend the movie, but be prepared for some 80s camp because it is loaded with it.
Well, it sounds like a fun time. Well, thank you all for sharing all of your insights today. It's very interesting to hear how different people are using AI today, how you think it will be changing and evolving over time. So I appreciate you all being here and sharing those thoughts and insights with everyone. And now I'm super excited to have some time to hear directly from each of you and kind of dive in deeper to show us how you're using Copado AI today. And so, Joe, I know you have several use cases that you'd like to share, so I want to pass it over to you and let you show us how you're using Copado AI in action.
Okay. Let me grab your screen. So here what I'm sharing, let me know if you guys can see it. Somebody say so in chat.
Yep.
I'm a little slow this morning, it seems. Okay, so this is the main interface for Copado GPT. Here at Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Arkansas, we can't necessarily show you things in process. We are the custodians of a lot of personal information and personal health information, and it's just not prudent for us to be able to pull up one of our orgs or something like that in case something were to happen and some sort of data leak were to happen. But what I can show you is the mess that is my Copado GPT desktop. So as you can see here, I have a number of chats that I currently have open, and I've deleted quite a few. But these are the kind of things I do. I have this one, which I titled "You Have a New UI," because this was the first chat that I opened whenever Copado's chat UI came on board, and I was able to see that I could have multiple chats, which was awesome. And this is the conversation I have with Copado GPT about just one-off things. Like, let's see. And here I was talking with it about some ADO issues that we were having, and he was able to give me some guidance on that. And one of the things I like about Copado GPT in particular, even though I think this might be a feature of most large language models, is that Copado GPT always answers like this. It'll give you numbers and then bullet points underneath. And if there's something that you don't understand, or if like, say, the system permissions, I wanted more information about this, then I could say, give me more information about number 2, or expand on number 2. And it would be able to do that and give me more information and help me target down into the meat of whatever that one particular bullet point was. So question and answer is a lot. That's a lot of what I do. Generally, when people ask me a question or want my help with something, Copado GPT is the first place I go. I give it a description of what the problem is they're having, make sure that everything that I know about it, it knows about it, and we have a conversation about it and talk about what the issue could be. But there are other things that we use it for, or at least that I use it for. One of those is we recently stood up a governance org, which a governance org, if you don't know, is a production Salesforce org that holds all of the credentials to all of your environments, to all of your pipelines. So you have one independent org that runs all of your deployments, that it's not part of your development pipeline. It's not on your production server for either of your development orgs. So I'd say here, just for this one, is a quick overview. I needed to configure compliance hub for deployments in our governance org. I told it what I've done and what sort of behavior I wanted out of it. And it would go through and give me steps for each thing so that I would know what to do and just get an overview. Like, say someone was to ask me, Joe, what's it going to take to get Compliance Hub running on our governance org? Then I could come into Copado and say, okay, what's it going to take basically to get Compliance Hub running on our governance org? And it gives me a lot of information so that I can kind of gauge what this effort is going to be and how long this is going to take, if it's even possible. Because sometimes people ask me something and I say, I have no idea, and I'll get back to you. And then I'll go and talk to Copado GPT and find out that the thing that they're asking for isn't something that we can do. And then I can use Copado GPT to generate an email that tells them in a nice way that we're not going to be able to do what they want us to do. Let's see. Here's an excellent one. So we were trying to decide when we moved from our normal production orgs, and you guys just give me a text or chat message if you need me to stop if I run over time, because I've got a lot. But we needed to be able to simultaneously develop our governance org and keep our 2 production orgs up and running and deploying packages and deploying stories into production. So my initial thought was, what if we created the governance org, built the pipelines, and then just had them all referencing the same repositories? And Copado GPT told me why this was going to be a bad idea. So I didn't go down that path. That's a big one, is being able to use it to do a sanity check for any ideas that I might have. So that is something that I use it for a lot, is what if we did this, or is this the best practice? If I create all of my user stories in development and then only push them forward and never change them or bring them back to development to change them, is that the best practice? And Copado GPT will give me a list of information about that and whether that is the best practice, whether it's not the best practice, things like that. Or how to integrate Copado robotics testing into, well, this was a big one. How to create or how to integrate Copado robotics testing with ADO so that when a test execution has failed, a bug is generated in ADO. And it gives me sort of a framework of how to do that. The things that you need to do, like create an API token in Azure, create a personal access token in Copado robotics testing, then set up the integration via the bug icon and create a ticket in Azure from Copado. And then once you get this information, once you get this right here, the thing that makes this so valuable is there's more information underneath here. This gives you an overview, but you could stop and say, okay, give me more about number 3. I need to set up the Azure DevOps integration via the bug icon. I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't really used ADO before. And you can drill down to the parts that you don't really understand and then get more information and learn more about it. Wow. Here's, let's see. Here's another one. So this is the one where I said, I think that the best way to promote changes down a development pipeline using Copado is to never change a user story once it has been promoted out of dev and into QA. And basically Copado GPT and I had a discussion about that. I found out that I wasn't necessarily correct about that, but it was probably okay. I still believe that you should probably push it back into dev if you're going to make changes to it. But it gave me other information that made it so that I wasn't suffering under that delusion that that was the only way to do it. You could do it other ways. So that is, I don't know, that's a lot. That's a lot of what I do. I ask it a lot of questions. I can't connect it. We take deliberate steps and deliberate and considered steps when advancing forward in technology. So giving Copado access, giving Copado GPT access to our backend or to our development orgs, we do want to do that and we do want to test it, but we have to move very slowly and consider all of the implications, especially security-wise, before we make such a move. So one of the sayings we have here is that things move at the speed of Blue Cross, which means that it's a little slow, but it is inevitable. If we've decided to do something, it's going to happen, but it might not happen today. So that's something that I have to temper myself with because I'm an impatient person. It's one of the things that language models do for me is it gives me the answers I want right now. It's fantastic.
Well, thank you for sharing this, Joe. I think it's helpful, especially if someone hasn't used it before, just to understand there's so many possibilities of the types of questions you can ask and the back and forth to dive in deeper. So it's helpful to see how someone is really using it in their day-to-day to speed things up and get the accurate answer. So thank you for walking us through that.
Sure.
I do have a question for you. A silly question. I heard you earlier reference Copado GPT as a he, and I'm wondering if you've given it a name, because I've heard from a few people that they've started to name their GPTs. They reference them by their name, and so I was wondering if you've given yours a name.
Actually, most of the large language models I use, I call chat. The reason I do that is, okay, like I said, I'm a big nerd. I watch a lot of YouTube videos, especially a lot of computer gameplay videos, and the discussion that the person who is running the video, who has created the video, their discussion with everyone who's watching that live, if they're doing it live, is they'll call them chat, which means you're addressing this big group of people that are watching you. So that's what I'll do is I call it chat. So I'll say, chat, do this, or hey, chat, what are you doing for this, or how do I do this? And I do it everywhere. It's not just for Copado GPT. It's for every single GPT that I have a connection to or that I've created myself.
I like it. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. I really appreciate it. And hopefully this was helpful to get people thinking about how they might want to start incorporating AI in their daily tasks. And with that, Natasha, I want to pass it over to you so you can share a specific use case of how you've been using Copado AI.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't look like I can move through the slides.
Here you go. I'll move it for you for now.
Okay, cool. So my little presentation is about FAQ documents. So like I mentioned earlier, we can't use any sort of AI when it comes to project-specific data. So our use cases are more on the outskirts. So documentation is a really big one that we have used Copado GPT for. So in this example, I'm just showing that if you have a regular FAQ document, although it can be helpful, concise, convenient, efficient, it also is prone to user error. So the answers that you get might be wrong. They might be flukes. They're subjective in that way. So it could be one path that one user took. It's not necessarily the best path or the most efficient path or the most accurate path. It's inconsistent in its formatting, whether that be question answer style or actual formatting on the document. Some people do bullet points, some people do numbers. And then it's also time consuming. So you need people to create documents, maintain the FAQs, and you need SMEs for specific FAQs. Like if you wanted a Copado robotics testing FAQ document, you need somebody who's actually an expert to create that and maintain it. And then also you have unknown sources. So a lot of times people don't put documentation in for their answers. And it is supported, but it's supportive, but it's only what's already added. So it's not generative in the way that AI can be. Looks like I have control now, so I can go ahead and move. So using Copado GPT, we get the same benefits that we do with a regular FAQ document, where it's helpful, it's concise, it's convenient, it's efficient, but we also get accurate answers. We get direct intended best path. So it's going to be the exact right answer, supported by documentation. The formatting is consistent. The one on the left, the example document, is just copy and pasted from the Copado GPT engine itself. It's quickly generated, so it's not as time consuming. You have the sources and documentation links within the answers. And then you can use these documents to support your team all the way from onboarding to expertise. So you don't necessarily already need SMEs, subject matter experts, to create these documents. You can use Copado GPT to create these documents and support becoming an expert in that arena. All right, so next I'm just going to show a little demo. Share screen. I'm on a new laptop, so bear with me. Okay, so hopefully you can see my GPT window. This is just a really quick demo. I think Joe kind of covered a lot of the demo, so I'm just kind of show the couple examples that I have. So the first one I have is something really basic. So for the CI/CD process, the step-by-step process for deploying metadata from sandbox to production. And it gives such concise and efficient answers. And that's what I really like about it. So step 1, step 2, and then it gives you the opportunity to analyze that answer in more depth if you wanted to, with the links to documentation. But if you're familiar enough, this is a really easy step-by-step process. And this is something that we have in our documentation that's, like I said, pinned in our Slack channel. It's material similar to this. So when people are onboarding onto projects and they're getting familiar with Copado, they can navigate to that documentation and see what they need to know for their project, for our teams. So instead of, they'll go through the certification process, it's a lot of material, and sometimes it's not all applicable to what you'll be doing day to day. So we have material from Copado GPT that relies on the documentation, but gives you a more efficient way to understand what your specific process is going to be. So this is a really good example of that. Step by step. And then towards the bottom, you also have all your additional resources or some follow-up questions and related content, which is, like I said, really nice, because if you wanted to get more in depth, you could. And then that's something that we would put in an FAQ document. You could do this separate if you wanted to. And then we have this just general FAQ document for Copado. So general questions, and this is really basic. So this would be, if you have somebody who's onboarding, who's never worked with Copado at all, has not gone through any certification trails or modules. What is Copado? How does it integrate with Salesforce? This is the real basics. And sometimes it's nice to go back and read these kind of questions if you've been far away from the basics for a while. It's just a nice little refresher. So this would be a super general FAQ document for people who are not familiar at all. And instead of, I think Joe mentioned before, like the pressure to go learn something new, instead of panicking because you have to go learn all this new software, imagine this document of all these most general questions that kind of walk you through the beginning, and then how to get started. And then you could go back and rely on this to how to get started on actually deploying. And these are the only 2 documents that you need. You don't need to go Google a bunch of questions and sort through all the documentation. And if you wanted to jump in documentation, it's already linked. And then the other example that I kind of covered is more specific FAQs. So this is one for Copado robotic testing. So say you have people who are very familiar with Copado or not too familiar with Copado, but they're interested in the robotic testing aspect. We have an FAQ document that's specific to the Copado robotic testing software. And they can come and read this document and kind of get started with Copado robotics, or even just read about it and decide if it's something they want to do. It's just a nice introduction and gets you set up for success. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that, Natasha. It's super helpful to see like a specific use case. I feel like that could be very useful to a lot of organizations.
Yeah, the documentation's great, for sure. And I think I lost access to move the slide again. So if you want to just move that. So here's how to get started. I think there was a question in the chat. This is real quick and dirty steps. So navigate to that URL. I think David put that link in the chat as well. If you want to accept those terms and conditions, log in to Salesforce with your credentials and accept Copado GPT and create greatness. I actually think there was a couple other steps that I had. So these are actually my 5, 6, 7, 8 steps. So the first 4 steps are shown in this picture. Navigate to training. This is so if you already have your Salesforce credentials ready, these would be the basic steps for you. If you're struggling and you can't get in this way and your login isn't working, or I encountered a certain issue where when I logged in, it kind of just looped me back because I don't think I had the right setup. So if you're struggling with that, you can navigate to the Copado community and create a playground from there. And once you've created that playground, retain your credentials and then go back to these steps and use those credentials in step 3.
Perfect. Thank you for walking through that. And if anybody has any issues, feel free to reach out to any of us and we can help get you set up there. And lastly, before we wrap up today, I'm excited to pass it over to David, who's going to share a little bit about Copado AI and where we're going with our AI platform.
Thank you, Katie, and thanks, Natasha and Joe, for sharing your experience with the Copado GPT beta and being able to get knowledge, like what you shared, Joe, with Postman is key for the things that we do every day. And also enabling others for onboarding, like you showed, Natasha, that's also crucial to make sure as a team, we keep working together and aligned with the same steps. And in line with that, we've been very excited about the beta program over the past 10 to 12 months. And we've had great adoption. And on the next slide, you'll see that customers have done over 40,000 prompts just in the last 6 months. So imagine, the thousands and thousands of hours saved just because Copado GPT is able to help you. And we can see that graph on the next slide, Katie. And you can see that we have over 500 monthly active users already, and then more than 170 customers who come in month over month. So this is great news because, as a product people and engineers, when we build things, we want to make sure that what we're building is adding value and people are, making sure that, they save time, they can progress in their work. And so this is a great satisfaction for us. And as we've been talking with different customers, including Joe and Natasha as well, to receive feedback, we've learned several areas that we can superpower all the use cases that you guys have. And so the first thing is that we noticed that there's different roles that are working with Copado GPT. There are business analysts and product owners doing refinement work. There are also developers and admins trying to understand how to use flows, how to generate code, have unit tests. And there's also testers who are working with Copado AI to generate automation scripts, generate manual test scenarios for user stories. And on the release side, we see release managers getting unblocked whenever they have issues or deployment errors. Like Joe mentioned as well, this can save you a lot of time. You don't have to open a case, but you can just get blocked and get moving with your day. And then also we see others generating training documentation and guidelines for others to be able to use features or use the solutions that you have, similar to what Natasha showed as well with the FAQ. So with that in mind, all these different roles and different use cases, what we're going to be introducing at Dreamforce is the GA version of Copado GPT, which is Copado AI platform. And we're introducing it with the AI agents, the DevOps agents. And so on the next slide, we can see just a quick preview of them. So the idea here is that when you start a new chat, you can choose which agent you want to talk to. So for example, if I'm on the business analyst side, I can talk with the plan agent. If I'm a developer and I'm generating code, I can talk with the build agent. If I'm generating guidelines and training material, I can talk with the operate agent. And so there are some out-of-the-box prompts that these agents will show you as well. So we're very excited to be introducing. You're actually the first group to see this preview. So many thanks for joining the call today. And one additional item I wanted to mention was, how do we make sure that the responses that are getting generated are more specific to your company or even to your team? And so in order for us to address that, we're also introducing the workspaces. And so you can see that in the screenshot on the top left. So basically, when you have a workspace, you can bring in your team and you can upload guidelines. For example, you can upload guidelines on how user stories should be written based on how you do it with your team on your company, or development guidelines, how code should be written as well. And so the idea here is that as your team interacts with the agents, if they generate user stories, if they generate code, it will follow your team and company specific guidelines. And so you can ensure that not only the generated content will be high quality, but it will also be specific to your team and your company as well. So one last item is that this new version of Copado AI will have its own user account management. So a user doesn't need a Salesforce user to be able to access, but this means that you can now expand to more people in your teams to be able to access. So it doesn't matter if they have Salesforce login or not, or a Copado license or not, they'll be able to access the Copado AI capabilities as well. So you can, make sure that everybody gets the value of the workspaces and the agents as well. So with that, we're going to be introducing these at Dreamforce. So thanks again, Natasha, Joe, and everybody who've provided feedback as well on Copado GPT beta. And just keep in mind that these agents will keep evolving over the next years. So they're going to be learning new knowledge. For example, you're going to be able to connect them to your metadata so that you can ask questions about your automations and your configurations. You will also have options to connect them to other platforms like Jira or ADO, so you can ask questions about your user stories. So we're going to be increasing those capabilities. And then from the automation side, you will see that over the next year, they're going to be able to do even more things. For example, kickstart a deployment for you, or for example, deploy some code to your sandbox. So as a developer, you can brainstorm with the build agent, then he can deploy it to the sandbox, and you can just go and test it and validate it. And so these are the types of things that we're exploring and looking forward to introduce to all of you. So the idea here, imagine a future over the next years where, as DevOps teams, we're working with AI hand in hand, so on a day-to-day basis. So we're writing requirements, we're building applications and features, we're testing them. And so just as Copado, make sure you can get control of your pipelines today, imagine in the future with all this innovation that is going to come forth together with AI. With Copado, we're going to be able to help you and work alongside with your teams and also with the agents as well to make this innovation happen.
Great. Well, thank you, David, Natasha, and Joe, for sharing all of this. It's super exciting to see where Copado AI is going, and I can't wait for people to get their hands on that soon. We do have some time if anybody would like to come off mute or throw a question in the chat.
Hey, David, I'm Sasi, and we recently signed a contract with you guys. I'm from Ericsson. And, we have some specific needs to our company. So we are trying to introduce this AI between onboarding the user stories from Jira to Copado. So, I would like to discuss those options with you guys. I'll ask my salesperson to connect with you guys, okay?
Totally. Thank you, Sasi.
Any other questions for David, Joe, or Natasha? If not, I just want to thank our panelists again for being here and for sharing all of these insightful looks into how they're using Copado AI. And again, thank all of you in our Copado community for joining us today. And hopefully you learned something new and you feel excited to go out and try some of this for yourself if you haven't already. So if you end up having any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to help point you in the right direction and make sure you're having the best experience. I hope everyone has a great rest of their day or night, and we'll see you soon at another DevOps Masters event. Thanks, everyone.